Welcome to the Community Preservation Committee meeting of October 29th, 2024. This meeting's being recorded. If you don't want to be recorded, you can drop. We will start by doing our roll call of our committee members present tonight. I'll just go in order that you appear on my screen. Nancy Nelson.
Nancy Nelson, Historical Commission appointee.
Thank you very much. John Kratz.
I'm John Kratsley for the Select Board appointee.
Thank you, John. Ed Lorner.
Edward Larner, Housing Authority appointee.
Thank you, Ed. Paul.
Paul Bohm, Recreation Commission appointee.
And Eve.
Eve Eisenberg, Select Board appointee.
Thanks very much. And I'm Burton Flint, Select Board appointee. This evening, we've got, I think, 4 applications to look at. And the way we'll go through this is we'll have each applicant do their presentation. Then the committee will have the opportunity to ask questions, and then we'll do public comment on each application as we go. And we'll also have additional public comment at the end of the meeting once we've gotten through the applications and some administrative things. Our first application tonight is from Concord Public Schools. Dr. Hunter, the floor is yours when you're ready. I would actually, just before you start out, I would point out that there is an additional schematic that was, or plan that was Dr. Hunter provided on the CPC's website, as well as letter of support from the Rec Commission. Dr. Hunter.
Great. Thank you so much. It's good to see you all again. So excited to be here tonight to give you some, again, the overview of the project we're envisioning at Thoreau and some of the updates since we saw many of you out at the site visit. I'm joined tonight by Justin Sparks, principal at Thoreau. We've also been able to ask one of our consultants, Tyler King, to be on with us from CHA. They are the group that did the feasibility work out on the campus and are owners and authors of the document that you received in terms of the schematic. So we're going to each take a turn providing some updates and information and then leave time for questions. So again, the scope of the project really is to revitalize the Thoreau campus. Some years had gone past where we hadn't been able to keep up with the maintenance. And then a fire happened and major resetting of 8 classrooms out on that field. And it really was time to revisit all of it once the pods had been removed and we could see the state of affairs out there. We had done some upgrading to the playground a few years ago with some combined capital and PTG funds to start to build out some accessibility, but most of the equipment aside from that is very dated. In fact, my understanding of some of it's Alcott's hand-me-downs. So we have a separate playground committee working on all of this, and they're working on some very intense fundraising to combine with an estate donation. So you don't need to worry about the playground. That's maybe good news. The scope of the project that we'd like to have you all considering is the rest of the campus in terms of the field, most especially. We're envisioning a soccer field of probably U10-ish full scale, and then possibilities to be split up for smaller children in the perpendicular, and then a number of other upgrades throughout the campus in terms of erosion and other controls that need to be done to beautify the campus, landscaping, and really make it a community space that I think we're all hoping to see it be when school is not in session. So I'm going to turn it over to Justin Sparks to talk a little bit more about that. He can maybe start to share that updated design. And then Tyler's here for the nitty-gritty details of how they came up with certain aspects of the design. And he's also the author of the cost schedule that was also provided to you in an updated fashion. Since we met at the building, I've been able to work with Lee, and I actually think she might be on tonight, Lee Jackson, Concord Recreation Director. So she wrote a letter of support that you already have, and had a very exciting email exchange with youth soccer. They're really thrilled to hear there could be another space and fields opportunity. None of them have quite put it to paper for me yet in a formal letter, but the response was really, really positive. So I think from there, I'll turn it over to Justin and Tyler and talk through where we are.
Great. Thanks, Lori. And thank you all for giving us a little bit of time tonight. Mr. Kratsley, though, I have to say you're not wearing your Thoreau hat as promised. So I won't hold it against you. So we're all really excited to hopefully make some pretty significant upgrades to the Thoreau campus. And as we were chatting earlier, we feel a little like Henry David himself, with our campus being a canvas to the imagination. So the grant application for 500,000 is largely for enhancement of green space and recreational space. And you'll see tonight that that number has been revised downward slightly as we continue to work with Tyler King and CHA on anticipated costs. So as Lori mentioned, this is part of a comprehensive campus plan, which includes rehabbing the open green space, creating multi-use sports fields. She mentioned the soccer field, adding community gardens, shade structures, walkways, and additional play equipment accessible to a wide range of interests and abilities. That came through, shown through pretty clearly in the surveys we did early on. So this space will benefit our students, families, and especially the wider Concord community, with those areas accessible during certainly and after school hours. So Tyler has up a map right now, and you can see some color-coded sections along with associated costs up in the right-hand corner. So we've worked really hard to connect the campus vision to both the CPC and Concord Rec priorities as outlined in the strategic plans, which you can see further and read further in the grant application. But we want you to know too that this is still very much in a conceptual phase. So we intend to incorporate your feedback as we hopefully proceed into the design phase. So Tyler's here, who helped us to develop the master campus plan last year. And as Lori mentioned, also this was due to feedback from our neighbors and other stakeholder groups regarding where we were at the state of the exterior of Thoreau. So we're really trying hard to listen to and act on what the community wants. So to complete the projects outlined in the plan, a variety of funding sources are being utilized, including capital and district funds, a fundraising campaign that has kicked off for the playground. That's exciting, and a state gift, and hopefully some CPC funding. And I only say this to highlight that Superintendent Hunter is committed to getting things done and making some significant improvements without going back to taxpayers. So trying to be creative. And this project, I believe, aligns with the educational and sustainability goals, which emphasize biodiversity, environmental health, and accessibility. So this project also supports our physical education, programming at Thoreau, and also community recreation use. That'll make it collaborative and inclusive. So the phase timeline extends from this spring, hopefully, and we'll be able to get started with some of the projects through likely 2027. And I'll just mention lastly that this has all been presented to community members as well as the school committee with really positive support and active stakeholder engagement throughout the planning process. So, we have a lot of work ahead, but we're really not looking to band-aid anything here. We really want to make sure everything's done well, and in concert with stakeholder input. So with that, Tyler has the map up. I hope you can all see that. And there are 3 color-coded sections which kind of highlight different aspects of the project, which we'll ask him just to kind of talk through a little bit.
Yeah, good evening, everybody. Can you hear me? I'm having some issues with my video, so I apologize that I don't have that turned on, but I hope everyone can hear me.
Yeah, we can hear you. Thank you, Tyler.
Okay, great. Yeah, so I think Dr. Hunter and Principal Sparks really kind of touched on all of this, but I can run through it just briefly. So as mentioned, there are kind of 2 main factors here. One is the field, which is shown up in the top left-hand corner. It's sized here for space limitations, but we are able to get a U10 field in there. And as Dr. Hunter mentioned, there's a yellow line depicted there running page west to east, which just identifies or shows that we can split this into smaller fields and have concurrent games going on for some of the younger members of the community or the school. And then as we move towards the right, the rest of that blue area, just really looking to repurpose it for enhancing the student and teacher play areas or learning spaces, and really realigning that path there to just enhance the mobility or accessibility through the park there, and then beautifying the slopes around it, and just really enhancing the overall aesthetic of it. And then moving down to the right-hand corner of this screen is where the new playground is proposed to go, or where we're thinking it would go. Well, and the rest of this plan in orange is really trying to transition between the new playground structure and the existing play structures in the green here in the central, which we would hope to expand, potentially add some benches, repurpose the basketball court to be more of a multi-use and really reach a wider audience, or be more functional. And then that orange space in the middle, as I mentioned, is just a transition between the two, and really trying to open that up, enhance that, and allow for some additional green space and community garden, and just something that the students and teachers and community can really enjoy and benefit from. So with that, I will turn it back over to Dr. Hunter and Principal Sparks, and if anyone has any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Yeah, thanks, Tyler. I think I'll just wrap up our, portion of the presentation to say it really has been a collective effort. The Thoreau community, the neighbors and the abutters and those nearby actually were somewhat of the initiators of the discussion and approached us 18 months ago, at least, to sort of start talking about the green space at Thoreau and the usage of the campus, and a nice gentle nudge of, don't you think you need to do some work out here, Dr. Hunter? They were right. So we're just excited that there's such an opportunity here from both the school population and the community at large. I think it can become a really, our other campuses are really heavily utilized, and this one is underutilized. So I hope we're about to change that.
Great. Thank you all. If I may just note, Anne, that Diane Proctor joined us at a couple minutes after the start of the hour. Diane, do you want to?
Yes, a select
introduce
board
yourself for
appointee, and I'm sorry, my Zoom thing has not been working, but I somehow managed to finally get it to work. So it's been problematic, but I apologize for being late.
Well, but we're glad to have you. Thank you, Diane.
I do have a question, if I could.
Sure, please.
Thank you. Laurie, this is so exciting, and Justin, this is really thrilling, but I have a question for you. I know that there's a planned tree planting by the 250 executive committee. Will any of those trees be incorporated into your planning? And how can that be supported and help? How can we help with that? That's what I'm trying to
Great. Good
understand.
timing on that question. I met with the 250th group last week. They have proposed some plantings at Thoreau, and we've been, giving them feedback on where it would work and where we might not want a tree because something else is planned. All of the tree proposals and outlines are going to the school committee a week from tonight. No,
Okay.
We're meeting Wednesday next week because of the election. Wednesday of next week
Wednesday
for a final public discussion of them. But absolutely, there are trees coming from the 250th planting to Thoreau, which will be a nice complement to the work we've designed here. And it, maybe down the road we can not need every dollar of landscaping that's proposed because we already have a few trees.
Well, that would be wonderful. I'm looking forward to watching that collaboration go forward. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
In order that they appear, I'm not sure that it's the order that they were raised, but John.
Yes. First, I'd like to thank Justin Sparks for the warm welcome today to the students and teacher from our sister city, Nanai in Japan. And also Dr. Hunter for her support of the exchange program, because they'll be at CCHS tomorrow and Friday in the Concord Middle Schools. So support from the entire Concord school system has been just so warm and welcoming. And the
Yeah, I'm
students had a
excited to see
great
them
day.
tomorrow, Judge.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
today they made origami with fourth graders.
I
And
got a
they
great
had to-
picture from Thoreau while they were there. Mr. Sparks texted me a nice shot, so it looked like a great
Well,
day.
The highlight of the day for sure. Of the
Yeah,
week.
and we all got hats, and
I saw it.
I actually gave mine away to my grandchildren tonight. So
The updated design.
she may wind up there someday. So we'll see.
Yeah.
Hope so.
But anyway, I do have one question. And perhaps it's for Mr. King. I don't quite understand what the green space at the far right is that's separated from the other two green spaces.
Yeah, so that is currently the area where there's an existing gravel parking lot. So the reason for the different coloring there is it indicates removal of that to be able to facilitate the installation of the new playground and all the surrounding green space there.
And so the parking would then become what I see just above it. The
That's correct.
spacing. Yeah, okay. Thank you.
Eve.
Thank you. Okay. This is great. As I'm an idiot, I didn't notice that was posted, this new plan. So I've been rapidly educating myself on this new plan. And I just have a quick question because I was prepared to ask questions about the previous plan, and it's so small on my printout that I can't tell what the date is, but it looks like the date of the new plan is March. On this new plan that you've just proposed, and in the budget, I noticed that we're resurfacing number 9, the basketball court, but in the original application, we were restoring the basketball court. And I was wondering if that was based on some community discussion that was had about losing the basketball court and making it a multi-use surface instead.
Yeah, and I'll answer, and then maybe Justin and Tyler can add details. We just had a lot of discussion of wanting as much flexibility as possible there, to not just do basketball. So I think we're trying to think a little broader. Justin and Tyler, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, I think a little bit further of an assessment of
Yeah.
there are areas where it is crumbling and certainly cracks. So I think we need to identify exactly and assess what the needs are. I don't see that space expanding, but some level of restoration or topping to make it more accessible, more user-friendly, and more multi-purpose, I think is the goal.
Yeah.
But will you then take down the hoop?
The hoops, at least one of them is in need of replacement.
Yeah. I think
Okay.
we definitely still want basketball to be an option there. We just don't want it to necessarily be the only option.
Yeah.
But again, and Justin's right, the condition of the court really needs when the design phase of this starts, I think we're skeptical that repair is viable at this point. It's in quite a bit of decay.
No, I agree. I was visited after the Mighty Moose. I went over there to take a look, and it is
Yeah.
pretty horrible for sure.
Yeah, yeah.
My second question is about the community garden number 11.
Mm.
There is some kind of gardening thing going on closer to number 4 on your map, or somewhere
Yes.
4 and 5. I didn't understand what that was. Is that also is that a community garden that's being moved then to 11?
Yeah, that's a good question, Eve. So there is a grounds for learning area in the back. It's not currently being used, although a lot of effort, I should say, did go into getting it up and running, in the past couple of years before my tenure here. It's just not in a great area right now, to be honest, with too much shade.
But shade,
and,
yeah.
Yeah, the shade and the distance from the school itself. So, between that area you see there, 16, 10A, and 11, and then also number 5, thinking about proximity to the school, we want to make sure that we have adequate sunlight, certainly access to water, and some level of proximity for those gardens. And then we also want to make sure that they're being maintained and there's a sustainability.
Okay, so it's a learning garden as well, not a community garden?
What's currently there?
the new number 11, we're thinking that's going to be a new learning garden.
Yes.
Okay. I just have one final question. I'm sorry to hog the scene here, but the 20% or 65 grand for additional soft costs, engineering and design, does that include the 2 plans that we've already seen, or is that going forward?
Tyler, do you want to answer that?
Yeah, sure. So that would be the permitting plans moving forward, submitting to the town for various approvals, and then construction drawings for contractors to build off of. So that's moving forward.
Okay, that's all my questions. Thank you.
Thanks, Eve. Good to see you.
Paul.
Yeah, thank you. I have a bunch of grandkids who are gonna love this. I'm trying to understand, so we got the blue, the yellow, the orange. You mentioned, Lori, at the beginning that we don't have to worry about something, some equipment. I look at the list here and I assume everything on this list is part of this project, including the new play structures, modular playground. You mentioned additional fundraising for something. So what in addition to this plan that CPC is going to fund are you adding here?
Yeah, so there's a pretty sizable playground expansion plan that's formed. I think we gave you a little bit of a schematic that was in process when you visited the campus.
Right.
So we're working with a vendor on that, and we're going to use the estate donation that we already have in hand, and then the rest will be private fundraising. So they have a goal. The committee that just launched has a goal of about $300,000 to raise, to really build out the playground. So there's a number of equipment pieces, and it's accessible. Justin's far better versed in it than I am. But that's the scope of the playground committee's fundraising efforts. So
Yeah.
they're looking to privately raise that.
So area 10B, it says new play structure, modular playground. That's in the CPA funds or not?
It is not, Tyler, correct?
That is, I'm sorry, terminology. Which one is the CPA? Is it this one, CPA?
Well, I'm looking at 10B, the area, and also the table,
Yeah.
which says play structure, modular playground. I'm confused how that differs from what you just described, Lori.
Oh,
Yeah.
number 12 so the current upper playground is, as Lori mentioned, it's out of date. So that's slated to be removed. And number 12 will be the new upper playground. And that's the one we're using the estate gift and the fundraising campaign towards.
Right.
And then we did add in here play equipment. And that could potentially enhance anything we're already doing.
Yeah, and the design and the areas haven't been 100% nailed down, as we don't really have a design yet. But so the area 10B, in and around the playground and the additional structures, there will be some additional landscaping and just improvements to the ground around that. So that is also included in that 10B.
Right now, Paul, it's an old baseball field that has become overgrown and unused. So we're looking to repurpose that area with green space again and some enhancements there, potentially play space. If that answers your question.
I think part of why it's needing clarification, the playground committee had a very grand vision that I asked them to scale back to really focus on the area that's number 12 there in green. And the vision extended to the rest of the corner there where 10B is. And so we thought, and most of it was landscaping and how to transition from playground to woodland and really become part of the nature environment that's so beautiful there on the Thoreau campus. So I think that's why the nomenclature is a little mixed, because it's the transitional space that the playground committee has spoken on, and there might be a few things we want to do there, but a lot of it is the grounds and the green space and really embedding that into the theme of the whole project.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Maybe touching off Paul's question. So we see I'm sure that's a rough budget of $444,000. By that, I take it to mean that everything and the request that was made to the committee was for $500,000.
Right.
so I take it that everything that is on these items in the table would be within the scope of what CPC funding would be used for, and anything, the playground at 12 would be above and beyond this.
Yes, correct.
Okay.
Yep. And we're very fortunate. CHA is very well versed in CPC
Okay.
guidance. So they were able to really help be sure that costs are all aligned with CPC funding.
Okay. And just the delta between 444 and 500, is there additional, is there something that's not reflected on this chart?
Well, I'm sure Mr. Sparks could come up with a couple other ideas. I wanted to bring you the actual number of where we were
Okay.
based on the vision from when we first started talking to you as we've
Okay.
been speaking.
And then I think as we go through the process, we will have questions about whether this is a school project or this is a recreation project, and whether or not it's a fantastic project is a little bit besides the point, because we get to fund recreation projects, right? And so there will be the question as to how will this be shared as a town recreation resource?
Sure.
There's obviously some great recreation facilities here, but it oftentimes comes down to programming and allocation of time, and who gets to go there. And I mean,
Sure.
Dr. Hunter, my kids went to Thoreau, and my daughter, for whatever reason, has continued to go back and hang out at Thoreau, hopefully not doing anything nefarious for years after graduating. So she enjoyed the playground space. So I
Yeah.
know members of the community will come in,
Yeah.
will come into this space, but sort of formally, I mean, you've referred to the Concord Youth Soccer, and I know they've got a lot of programming, at the field down the road. But how will that be managed? I'm just thinking about sensitivity to having members of the public come onto a school campus during school hours, and how that gets programmed out. Because like
Yeah.
I said, I think we will face these questions, and we'll want to know
Sure.
how, sort of what percentage of this is town recreation versus
Yeah, great
enhancement of-
question. Typically, and I'm going to answer for all the schools, and this will be the next example. Typically, the only restriction is during the actual 6 hours that the children are at the school. We keep, the campus really needs to be secure and really focused on the students. But the rest of the evening, afternoon, day, weekends, our campuses, and this one next, hopefully, and just as busy, are very highly utilized by the community at large. It comes about in different ways. In some cases, Concord Rec does the scheduling, and we don't have anything to do with it after a certain point of the day. Certain hour in the afternoon, 4 o'clock or such. Other times it's us doing the scheduling, and we work through the requests that way. We're really wide open. I think in my head, it was probably more aligned to the first option I just gave you, because that would be on par with Willard, Alcott, Sanborn, soon to be the middle school. Most of the campuses are turned over to the community after whatever hour of the day we all agree to, and then they do all the scheduling. So I think it's a shared answer that I will give you. We haven't talked through all those details, but given the way we operate on the other campuses, that is my expectation.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
And then, yes, Paul?
I was going to say, Burton, along those lines, I'm really pleased that the coordination has taken place with both the recreation department and with youth soccer. And since I sit on the recreation commission, I know that there are increasing number of conversation between recreation department and the schools about multiple use of those fields, not only at this school, but other places as well, to make full advantage for the public use of those spaces. So I think
Absolutely.
it's along the lines of
Great.
what we're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah, great.
Yeah,
Thank
great.
you.
And I would note again for the committee that the letter of support we got from Recreation Committee on this. And I guess just one final comment, and I think I made it as something along these lines during the site visit, but it's really evident here looking at the plan. This Thoreau property is kind of a transition space to this great town public open space that's between the school and the Assabet River, which I know there has been a long time discussion on NRC about creating Assabet River trails that would potentially connect Pine Street to even all the way down to by Damon Mill, which is a great community resource, but it also potentially being a way for kids to get to and from school. And so I would just hope that any planning takes into account that the existing trail connection that's down there by 10B,
Yeah.
in the woods there, and what could be eventually happen with this with the additional school space in terms of connecting to that open space behind. I guess it's sort of the area around 1 and 3 on the map, and just
Yeah, great,
giving consideration to
absolutely.
that.
Absolutely, we're gonna look forward to having that opportunity as we make our way through this project. We've
Right.
been able to do that very effectively. The middle school's got the rail trail. It's kind of similar in parallel, and
Right.
we don't want to miss any opportunities like that.
Yeah.
So.
That it may have been before your time, Dr. Hunter, but I remember I think the rail trail, the school originally wanted it to be fenced off from the rail trail because of safety concerns and it was maybe coming from the community resource officer at that time. It's great to see that hasn't been fenced off. I actually walked up to the middle school a couple days ago from the rail trail, and it's a great access point. So just having that, those connections would be great. Eve, you've got your hand raised.
I would just tag along to your comment, Burton, that when I was there, I did notice the fence that protects people from rolling down the hill in that area 6. It's very steep. But I'll be interested to see if that becomes part of this project, either removing part of that or fixing it or making it look better than a chicken wire fence between the school and the pond. That's all.
I can imagine there's safety concerns with keeping the children on the campus.
Yeah, it is
for
as
sure.
much keeping them in as keeping others out.
Given their water down there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other committee members have any questions or comments for our applicants this evening?
I have
Diane.
one small question, Laurie, and Justin. In terms of security, we all know that unfortunately this is something about which we have to worry in our schools. How does that managed in an open area like this where there are neighbors nearby and to some degree forests that could preclude close scrutiny? How is that managed, and do you have cameras that are working all the time? And I mean, I wonder if you could just speak to us briefly about that. I think it would be helpful.
Yeah, unfortunately, yes, we do have cameras. We were always looking to add more, so we have more visibility. There's folks that watch outdoor cameras, especially all day long, and not their full-time job, but that's a presence that we always have open and watchful to.
I wish we didn't even have to think about this.
Oh, I know, Diane, you and I have talked about this a number of times over the years, how awful it is we're even having the conversation. And then the other, for me, and Justin can add other ideas, but to me, the other really big part is the adults and the supervision and the vigilance and that security lens on everything, so that anything that looks out of sort, we spot the little things when they're little and can attend to them quickly, and really trying to be sure that our adults are really watching and caretaking that anything is up for, circumspect, sadly. Do you want to add to that, Justin?
Yeah, just it's always on my mind, unfortunately, Diane. So I'm glad you asked. But beyond the cameras, and we do have just about 360 around.
Yeah.
My assistants and assistant principal are always monitoring. They're good at catching things that are a bit unusual. And we have the occasional dog walker on campus. So it's just a conversation. Our neighbors are very close and we love them, and so it's a shared space to some extent, but it's usually just me going out and having a conversation and a reminder about school hours. We've got some signage, but within the school community with our students and our staff, and our families, it's about building a culture of security, where students, even as young as kindergarten, first grade, if something seems out of sorts, then they report it, and they're very good at it. That answers your question a little bit.
Well, my sister-in-law was the librarian at Sandy Hook when everything happened there, and she was the only one left alive to go and identify the bodies. And so I'm very much aware of how in the most innocent environments, something can be frightening. And so I was just curious as I walked around the other day as we were visiting. I kept thinking, I wonder how during recess times and play times, this is kept. And I don't mean to frighten us.
Yeah, no, it's a challenging balance.
No.
I was an elementary school principal when Sandy Hook happened, and I know we've had this conversation, and we found another family in Concord with close ties and loss in Sandy Hook, and we ran drills while the kids were outside. It was terrifying, to be honest.
I know.
And we know there's a vulnerability there, and yet we just need to be vigilant and really attuned to what's going on around us. Because we would never keep them in over that risk. But to your point, Diana, it can happen anywhere. And unfortunately, it's a community like ours that is more likely to have this.
I mean, it's so ironic, isn't
Urban
it?
settings, yeah.
Yeah. Well,
We try to strike the right balance at the elementary level
Right.
between, shielding them and, from the world, while also ensuring a level of preparedness. But at the middle and high school, it's it's different.
it is.
For kindergartners, first, second graders, that's a big, heavy,
And we just did Alice drills in middle and high school. We don't do it with the kids at elementary. We train the adults and
Yep.
then tell the kids they have some, loosely tell them they have some options if an emergency happened. But trust me, that's loose, because if you're too careful, they'll take it literally and
I know.
execute early and when they choose to.
But I'm of a generation that, they told us not to look out the window if there was a loud noise because our eyeballs would melt, and to get under the desk. So, I mean, hello.
Yeah.
And those were in elementary school days. So, these things are traumatic and difficult to balance, but I'm grateful for the conversation, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Diane. And thank you, Dr. Hunter and the rest of our applicants for presenting this evening. I think with no further questions, we will move on to our next application.
Great. And thanks again for the flexibility on the date. I know you had to
Oh,
rearrange
course.
because of my school committee calendar. Thank you. Have a good night.
Happy to. Have a good
night.
evening.
Thank you.
Okay, that brings us to the Regional Housing Services Office application, where the applicant is Megan Zamuto. And I see we also have Liz Rust on the line, who might have a thing or two to add. With that, Megan, you've got the floor.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. My name is Megan Zamuto. I'm the Deputy Town Manager, and I'm happy to be before you this evening to talk about the Regional Housing Services Office. And I'm genuine in saying I do enjoy putting together this application. I enjoyed it in my previous community of Maynard as well, when we were also a member, because it's a nice chance to look back at the progress that the community has made, revisit our goals, make sure we're on track for what we're trying to do. And I tried to put a lot of information in this application about what the RHSO does. This is the 10th year now before you, so I think most of you are fairly familiar. But there's a lot of different ways that our continued support to belonging to and being the lead community for this Regional Housing Services Office can really help further town goals. So I'll get to it. My request for you this evening is $43,500. I would also be contributing $33,500 from the town budget for planning and land management, which is a total budget for the year of $77,000. And I did mention that this is the 10th year that Concord has been participating in this office. There are 10 communities that participate as well. So we are in good company with our neighbors in Acton, Bedford, Lexington, Lincoln, Maynard, Natick, Sudbury, Wayland, and Weston. And so if you're not familiar, the RHSO helps us meet our community housing goals by working on monitoring, SHI administration, home administration, local support for Concord's housing nonprofits, and working on resales of existing affordable housing units, along with regional activities and support. I think many of you participate in our quarterly housing roundtable, which has been a really great success with multiple town committees and external town partners that are interested in housing, getting together to revisit the housing production plan, to talk about what we're doing, to share in initiatives that are coming up and make sure that people are on the same page. And that has actually been such a successful model that the select board had some goals this year to try to use that model for other topics like sustainability. There was one roundtable on that topic, and looking at some other areas where that model could be used to make sure everyone's on the same page. And we really have to thank the RHSO for assisting us and leading those efforts. So one thing I want to mention, and I might turn over to Liz for this, but there is an increase in funding this year that you may have seen for $10,000. And if you recall, the way the funding works is we anticipate how many hours we're expecting to use with our consultants on the RHSO team. And since we've been doing it 10 years, we're getting pretty good. Liz really, I can't speak for her, is getting very good at estimating the amount of hours that we typically need, looking at the projects that are coming up and looking at some of the different initiatives we're working on. If we don't need all of the hours, then we can send them back. So that has been really, I think, a key way that the CPC in the past has been comfortable participating in a portion of the funding. So as I mentioned, this year we are asking for an additional $10,000. This is a one-time temporary increase in our program budget. And this amount is crucial for this one-time year because we're expecting a leadership transition. And so I don't know, Liz, if you'd like me to turn it over to you or if you want me to summarize.
Sure. Well, I can say,
Yeah.
because I've worked with many people here for some number of years. So, and actually I was just looking at my information. So it was fiscal year FY12 was the first year for Concord coming in. So, so it's a little bit more than 10 years. So it's been a long time. I've been working with Concord and Concord's housing for a long time. Yeah, so I'm moving to retire. That's and it takes a little bit of time. This is a unique position. This is a unique office. This isn't a regular just put out the job posting, people are going to come right in. The services and the knowledge that's expected is at a state level, that you have the understanding of all the state programs, yet very interested in working very locally. So it really has both of those pieces to it. These are all part-time jobs. And so the idea was to have a co-director come in and work with me for a year, where I could then transition over to them. And then I would be available to work as a consultant, just, on for specific projects. I know a lot about your housing. I know a lot about other towns' housing. So it's not that I would just be unavailable even after that. But in terms of leadership, and I think that was the key that Megan talked about, the leadership change, it's important, I think, for the continuity of the office, to bring someone in and to have a transition where they can get to know you all. There are 10 towns and there's 10 groups like you, and there's 10 inventories and 10 affordable housing trusts and all of this to learn, and every town does things a little bit different. I didn't think it was right, or I put too much into just, like to do the, okay, next month I'm retiring. Right. And then so that's just wouldn't really work here. And I think that we've had new communities join the organization or join the RHSO, and communities transition and would like to see it continue past me. Right. Like no one can stay in their job for forever. And, I've been doing this for a long time. And so I think it's well served for all the communities to find someone who, is the right technical, the right person, and that I can have a real transition time with them, so that they're really up to speed, and then be able to, should people want whatever, come, have some number of hours as an individual contributor. That would be an FY after that. I don't know, I get my FYs a little mixed up here. So this would be, so we're in FY this, so this would be the transition year would be FY26.
Yeah.
so that in FY 27, I could do some work on a, project by project basis, but I wouldn't be doing that as the director of the office. So the idea is to transition the director. And we put in some amount of money equal for all the communities. So everyone took $10,000 irrespective of what share of hours that they are. So some of the smaller communities are, saying, well, I should only have if I'm only 4% of the RHSO, I should only have 4% of this. But we really think that the director and the leadership and the management is really an equal expense to everyone who participates. So we just did across the board. And then, and again, as Megan said, if we hire and the staffing works out different and it's too much money, then, you don't have to, have it all. I mean, you can have those hours refunded. And additionally, now, because it's so early in the year, by the time we get to March or April, if we say, oh, now that we have a more detailed staffing plan, we really think it's like $8,000, you've appropriated a higher amount, and then we'll just invoice for less, and that you'll just have a balance in your CPA amount there, and that you'll take that back. So this would be just wanting to, have some amount that we can then work through.
I'm going to be a little, I'm going to interject. And first of all, I'd say, Liz, congratulations on your retirement on behalf of the committee. As somebody who's had the pleasure of being on this committee for maybe, I don't know, 6 years, so maybe about half the time you've been supporting RISO. But I know some others, Diane, Judge Crassley, have been on the committee longer than I. We've all benefited immeasurably from just what you've taught us about housing in Concord, and of course, helping to manage these programs and the roundtables. So thank you very much for that, and congratulations. I just wanted to interject that before we got into any other further questions on the application. And so if you had anything further, Megan?
That covers it. Happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Okay. I've just got a couple questions. So in terms of the allocation of hours estimates between the communities, you see Concord and Sudbury are sort of the consuming a larger share than Wayland, as for example. What drives that? I saw that for the FY24 actuals, Concord had an unexpectedly large amount of monitoring but saved money in other categories, staffing categories. Can you give us a sense of what sort of drives Concord's participation allocation?
As Megan said, it's really the amount of hours that we spend. We support the CHDC. We attend many of the housing trust meetings, so we do a lot of committee work that we don't do for other communities. Okay. And Concord has a large number of ownership units for monitoring, and the resales for those come under the monitoring line item there too. Okay. Yeah, I'll just say that.
So compared to other towns, a lot of committee work. We've got 3 housing committees. We've got the round table, and a lot of units that require monitoring for resale. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. My other question was going to be on what was behind the $10,000 increase, which you've obviously already answered. I will go to others. Diane.
Thank you so much. I have to say, Liz, I never think of you as being in any other community but ours.
That's what I felt like when I was in Maynard. It's like,
hello. Yeah,
that's the consummate consultant, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Only client, right?
You pulled that off brilliantly, my friend. You're just an amazing woman. I think that my question really has to do with how is it that you will, as you train someone, to move forward, are your intentions to get someone who has had, and I know this is, jumping way ahead, but my curiosity provokes me to ask this question. Are you looking for someone who has had a lot of housing experience? Are you looking for someone with administrative experience? Are you looking, how are you balancing that look? And,
yes.
And will that extra $10,000 that we're committing this year, I suspect rather happily, but committing, because I can't speak for the committee, I can only speak for myself. To what degree might that in fact be part of an increase in a salary for someone going forward? And so that this might not be, a one-time event. So I just wondered if you could, I know you
Sure, I
can't,
think that
you can't prognosticate that
Hmm.
specifically, but I'm curious.
So the job has just the things that you sort of talk about. There's, oh, I sort of lost you here. There's partly administration, like the management of the office. And then there is the housing program, and then there's the individual contributing. I do projects myself where I actually do the project, right? And then I manage the staff and all the work of the office. And then there's the, like all the, I don't know, whatever, the budgeting and the accounting and like whatever all that other stuff is. So we would look for someone who has all of that. All of it. And then also someone who's local. I think it's really important that someone is, maybe not Concord, but, like in.
Oh, no, excuse me, just Concord.
But I think that's, I don't know if that's that, like it's an RFP kind of a hire, first of all, because it's, but that would sort of be a, a criteria, evaluation criteria. But I think it really adds to the position that someone is, in their community and really understands, like part of the job is like understanding what happens on the ground. Like, this is really what it's all about, is like all these projects and all these particular efforts, as well as how they fit into the larger regional fabric and then the state programs, right? It's a bottom up, top down, right? It's and sideways, right? It's all of those energies all coming together in terms of the housing. So I think you'd want someone who has all of that, right?
So you don't anticipate, therefore, that, or do you all anticipate, and Megan, this includes, you and your thinking, you don't anticipate that this $10,000 is going to be needed going forward in order to attract, someone, no one is going to be better than Liz, but someone who is.
You're very kind. You're very kind.
So
we'll see. We'll see.
Okay.
I think that, it was priced so that the hours that so it's not a full-time job because there's not enough hours for the communities. So that for the hours that we envision and the hourly rate for a new person, it was an appropriately hourly rate for this position that they could come on board for that.
Thank you. That explains that. That helps me understand. I hadn't realized that it was an hourly rate, and that helps me feel more relaxed about that increase.
So it's $100,000 to the whole RHSL budget because it's 10,000 per community.
From each community.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Okay, Eve.
Hi, yes. Also agreeing that Liz is basically irreplaceable and cannot leave. But anyway, congratulations on your pending retirement. I just have a quick question, actually for Megan. The amount of other funding sources is 33.5, and I read somewhere in here that it's this coming from the town to cover the program fees, staff time, and program assistance. This is probably a stupid question, but would the town like split that 10K with the CPC ever, or is it, that's not a logical thing to do? I just don't understand.
Well, I had to make a budget request here, and so this is the request that I did, trying to keep a similar number for my general fund request, and I thought since this was expecting it to be a one-time year request to layer on staff for the training period. Of course, CPC can do what you like, and I'll be grateful for it. But my request was trying to think about my staff, my town budget as well, and trying to do a lot with that. So that was my approach in coming up with this request for you today.
I get it. And I think it's a fabulous idea to overlap people, because it seems to be infinite amount of stuff that Liz has to offload to somebody else. Here's my second question. Are we allowed to know if there's already somebody lined up to follow her? Can we know that?
Well, you never know till you put out the posting and people
Okay.
apply, but two very qualified people have asked me about the opportunity.
Okay, that's what I was wondering. Thank you.
Who is the decider, to use Bush's language?
The town with
The
my
town.
recommendation.
All right, okay.
John,
Yeah, Liz, are there other folks in other towns that you work with? And do they have your same title, or do they represent some other part of town government?
Ask your question again, John.
Yeah, are there folks in in the 10 cooperating towns?
Mhm.
Do you work with some individual in each town who has your same title or has a different job but connects with you?
So I
Coordinates
have a
with you?
contact in every town. Every town has a member of our advisory committee, but we are their technical resource. So there's no one in the other towns who have the sort of the depth of the housing experience or the depth of knowledge of that particular town's housing inventory and programs.
Okay,
so you
they
are
have
that
some
person
job.
for 10 towns.
They have some job within their town
Yeah,
That-
exactly.
in which they're asked to take on this job.
Well, they take on the liaison job with us, and
Yeah,
then we are their staff assistants, really their technical assistants. You know, we're kind of like their consultant, their onboard consultant.
Right.
Because some towns that are not a member of our HSO, they may still have affordable units in their communities. And
Yeah.
so the town planning staff or someone in their town hall would be responsible for kind of the ongoing annual maintenance and monitoring of these units. And I can speak to this because when I was in Maynard, we were not originally part of the RHSO. And, you know, we didn't have that technical expertise in-house. And we found out about this and wanted to join so that we can hold on to those units because it's so critical. All this time and effort and energy and money is used to protect, to create these units. Preservation is so important. And it's really an investment in keeping those units available for folks in the community. So we just welcomed Natick a few years ago. They were trying to do things in-house. And I think the intermunicipal agreement kind of caps out at about 10 people that we have. So we had one more spot or maybe we even adjusted it to let them in.
Correct. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
acceptable.
but it's like, how many consultants can we have to support so many towns? And the group thought about it and said, we think we can do this. And it has not interrupted service at all. But there is a regular connection of the communities, the town managers and the folks a little bit below that are working on a lot of the housing issues to make sure that we're all on the same page. And there's a lot of regular check-ins that this model is working.
So, and then there are a couple of towns that would like to join and then ask periodically, and I sort of say, no, we're kind of done. Especially with the leadership change, we're not really able to take on another community. Natick was a big community. We're still, learning all their housing and all of that and helping them.
Okay.
My question, Burton, if I could just, I've raised my hand, but I guess what I wanted to ask Liz and Megan is, what is your definition of the appropriate community to join? I mean, what are the parameters you place around that?
In a budding community, for
Okay.
sure. And a community that I think that's probably the more technical decision, and that a community that has a decent amount of housing and housing support and desire to maintain their housing.
All right, that's what I was.
Yeah, we're not really we don't want to do housing, so we're
Yeah.
going to give it to you to do it for us.
Gotcha.
But we want to help you accomplish your housing goals.
Your goals.
Partner.
Thank you very
Build
much.
capacity through the shared service.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Any other members of the committee have questions? And I realized in the last application, I didn't ask if any members of the public had any comments, but if you do on that, or more importantly on this application, you've got the floor. Or raise your hand, please, I should say. Okay. Thank you very much, Megan and Liz. Liz, again, congratulations. Happy trails. I'm sure you'll do an excellent job helping transition to somebody into trying to fill your big shoes. And thank you very much. And with that, we can.
And I'm sure you're going to see me again. So it's
I'm
not
sure we
really
will.
completely goodbye, right?
Yes.
Well,
Yeah.
But
Thank you for your
thank you
time.
for your support for the transition.
All right.
And if
Thank
any
you.
questions come up in the meantime before your decision, please let me know. I'm happy to follow up. So thank you very
We
much.
sure will. Thank you. With that, we can move to our third application of the evening, which is
Has Megan left, Jeff? Megan, are you coming? She says selfishly, are you coming Friday for the MCI event?
I'm sorry to say I have a cell phone site visit that evening. Happy to say that we're trying to make progress on cell phone service. And it was,
It's the first Friday. It's in the morning.
I know this is at 10 o'clock. So I'm going to see what I can do. I might be able to be in two places at once, but
Okay, sorry to butt in with third.
my two priorities are MCI and cell service. So it's really it's an exciting but wild Friday. So I'm
Okay, sorry. Thank you all for the indulgence.
okay. With the next application is the Phase 2 Giroux Recreation Area Activation Design and Cost Estimation. I believe Phil Griffiths will be presenting tonight. And so Phil, you've got the floor.
Good evening, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can and see you.
Great.
Thanks.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to meet all of you for the first time, and I hope not the last time. I'm new to town, and I hope to be very much involved in recreation development activities around town for the years to come. So I look forward to working with many of you in the future. Bear with me as I try a technical, see if I can get this to share with you. And I'm hoping this will pop up on your screen. It's not working. I'm going to do this. Let's see how I can do. Bear with me for a second. I'm trying to get this presentation. If I can figure it out.
Has he been given share screen permission? Oh, good. Okay.
There we go.
Can you see that?
We can. It's in. Yeah.
Great.
It's
so everybody can see that.
There we go. Now it's in presentation view. Yeah.
Great.
Got it.
Thank you. So I am the chair of the Recreation Commission now. I have been so for about 18 months now. Many of you have a much longer history with Giroux Park than I do. I won't go through the whole history of the park, other than to say that we've gotten to a place now where we have a very nice waterfront park adjacent to the bike trail. It's beginning to get some use and some attention. I live not far and I go by there all the time, and I'm starting to see people using it and enjoying that park, which is terrific. It's a great resource for the town, but it needs to be activated. We need to do more to make that a really great park. And given the potential that's there with future developments, whatever ends up happening with the redevelopment of MCI, it's literally adjacent to that property, adjacent to the bike trail, adjacent to an active West Concord community. I think it's a park with a tremendous future, and we look forward to working with you on developing it even further. One other observation to make: the Recreation Commission recently completed a strategic facilities plan where we talked to many people in the community about what they wanted to see in recreation. And there were two themes that came out of that work that we heard very loud and clear. One of them was make best use of the existing facilities that we already have, improve them, make them better. And secondly, access to water, access to the great water resources that run through our town and ponds that are there. So we listened to that and saw that the opportunity at Giroux Park to sort of meet both of those priorities from our study and to enhance a terrific park that is now in the public realm. I would add a third piece to that, which we'll close out this presentation with, is a sort of overarching desire amongst myself and our colleagues in the Recreation Department and on the Commission to make better accessible properties for those who need help getting access to recreational facilities, and where we can make universally accessible and ADA accessible projects, we should always seek to do so. So in that light, we have worked very closely with our colleagues at the Concord Public Works. I keep saying the DPW, it's the CPW, with Concord Public Works to sort of look at where are we now with Giroux Park and where be and what are they still doing. And to put about it, to sort of underscore that relationship, we worked very closely with them. They are at the end of the work that they are doing there. They're down to a few punch list items, but they're not the folks who activate recreation areas. That's not their world. That's our world. So we've worked very closely with the DPW to get their blessing and partnership for us to sort of look at the park and begin to take it forward from the work that they've done to date to bring it to where we are. So I take you back to a document that many of you may have seen years ago when the public was talking about Giroux Park and what they would like to see there in the conversations. You'll see there were all kinds of activities that were talked about there: playgrounds, pavilions, shoreline walk, fishing pier, boat launch, all these sorts of activities the public had expressed an interest in and were sort of put out conceptually. We're now at the place where we can begin to start doing those things. And we think that the two places to start are with the playground and a water access facility, fishing pier and or kayak launch, depending on what we learn when we get in a little bit closer. What may not be specifically where they're located on this map, but there are a number of opportunities to do it, and we're very excited about moving forward, sort of activating with those two next components of this terrific park. So from the project scope, what we're looking for is to design and engineer and get a cost estimation to do two things for the park: water access through a boat dock launch and or a fishing pier structure, and an accessible and inclusive playground. There's always, when you do these sorts of things, there are additional landscaping improvements that are associated with that. You've got to build trails, so pathways so people can get there, fencing, landscaping around, when you've moved things around. That's all part of that design as well. And in our conversation with CPW, what we would like to also do with this is create a comprehensive sort of operations, maintenance, and capital replacement plan for the park. It's a best practice when you are building parks and looking at recreational facilities. You got to think, okay, how long is this equipment going to last? When are we going to need to replace it? What's the annual effort to take docks out of the water, store them, put them back, move things around? So sort of understanding what that is so that we can work with our partners in CPW and elsewhere to manage this park appropriately moving forward. So we've built into this study some assistance in doing that so that the two agencies can work together to understand that and make sure it's rationalized and fully costed into our budgets. So those are the two major components. It's a design and cost estimation for two activation features and related landscaping, and a creation of an operations, maintenance, and capital replacement plan for the park moving forward. Budget, you have seen, this is the same as it was in the initial description. We estimate a $90,000 project. There's a little give or take depending on how much sort of topographic survey work and detailed sort of geotechnical engineering work is already done by the Natural Resources Commissions and the Warner's Pond Task Force. So we'll use all of that, supplement what we need to do on top of that, and come up with, that's how we came up with this budget. It's based on experience of the folks in our group and at Public Works with doing these kinds of projects in the past. We think it's a reasonable budget that should get us to what we're looking to achieve out of this. The design, there's always a variable as sort of how detailed the design goes. We would get it as detailed as we can for the budget that we have, depending on what the engineers find out there, and then move forward from that. We've got quite a bit of community support. To date, we've got letters of support. I believe they are into you. I apologize if they are not. I believe you should already have received them from the Natural Resources Commission, from Concord Public Works, from folks in the Assabet and Sudbury River Organization, ORS, the Warner's Pond Task Force, who are all on board with us looking to activate this park and make great things happen there. So you'll probably get more moving into the future, but those are the ones we know of so far.
We do have those letters. Well, I don't think we've got Public Works. We've got ORS,
Okay.
Warner's Pond Task Force, NRC, and a member of the Giroux family.
So that's great. Yes, Nancy Giroux was going to send one. That's terrific. We will get some sort of formal notice from Public Works that they're on board with us and what we're doing. We're just working out all the details of how we're going to work together on this moving forward. I did want to share with you one thing that is slightly revised from the initial application, and I take responsibility for this with the understanding the various fiscal years. I'm sort of new to the CPA and town schedule of budgets, but what we envision is that as we understand it, that the funding from this, if this project is approved, would be available in the fall of next year, so that by the mid 2026 we would have this the design and cost estimation done, and we anticipate coming back to CPC and or the town for funding requests for the construction later that year in the fall. So if that happened, that would be approved in the 2027 town meeting, fall 27. The bottom line is essentially if you're able to fund us this now for the design and cost estimation, we anticipate by the spring of 2028 was when you'd actually have facilities on the ground and usable for the public. So it takes a long time because of both just funding cycles and town meeting cycles and your cycles, but as well as, you know, public input, construction, all those things. It takes a long time. So we're looking at 3 years out, 2028, for actually having people using the facilities as we'd like to see them. Just so you have an idea, when we talk about kayak and boat launches, these are modular pieces of equipment. They're not necessarily permanent structures that can be moved, expanded, put in and out. This is the kind of thing we imagine. This is an ADA accessible boat launch, kayak launch. I don't know where this picture is, but this is the sort of thing that we imagine putting in at Giroux Park. This is the same kind of idea with a fishing pier attached to it, right? So that you've got access down the side for the kayaks. It's exactly the same kayak launch. It's the same company that gave us these specs with a fishing pier attached to it. So it's a structure, something like that. One of the questions is how long and how far out does it need to go? That depends on a number of factors that we'll figure out when the engineering and design phase. But these are the kinds of modular units that we're talking about. I haven't put in pictures of playgrounds because I assume most of us have an idea what playgrounds look like and might look like, but there will be active public participation in designing a playground for us to figure out exactly how it will look and exactly what it will look like. But I think we understand it. I put these in just because I don't know if people understand what a ADA accessible water access structure might actually look like, and that's what it is. So I'd like to sort of end this comment by showing you something, which I think will sort of help you understand why we're so excited about the possibility of what we're doing here. And I'm just going to find it. Hang on a second. How do I get out of here? If you bear with me for one moment. And I'm going to share something else with you, which I think will sort of let you understand what it is that we are so excited about. And where is it? Here it is. Can you see that?
Yes.
Okay. This is what the kind of thing that we envision being able to happen at Giroux Park with an accessible boat launch. It really access to the water for folks in our community who may not have access in other places or other ways. This is that piece of equipment that I showed you on that slide. You know, may not be the exact one that we use, but this is the kind of thing that we in the Recreation Commission would like to see happening all over the place. Access like this to the resources we have in the town for everyone. And I think Giroux Park is, with its adjacency to the bike path, all of the future development that may be going on at MCI Concord, is a place that we can demonstrate what we can do in terms of accessibility in our town with our existing park resources and not at huge expense. I think it's worth doing.
Great.
So this goes on for about another minute. Sorry, you'll see that you'll just see how he's able to use the facility all the way on his own. So we're excited to have a vision to be of doing something like this in Concord at Giroux Park with its access, you know, the adjacency to the bike path, the opportunities with the MCI Concord redevelopment, having an active recreation facility right there nearby, I think will pay dividends in the long run for all of us. And those of us who live nearby, of course, are particularly excited about it, but I think it can become a very attractive resource for the town. And from where I sit, it's exciting to envision doing this sort of thing in many other places around the town as well. So there you go. You don't need to see any Chewy dog commercials. Sorry, let me shut that one out of there. So that's where we are. We're excited to work with our partners in the town and with the CPC. Any questions anybody has for us?
I've got some questions. Thanks, Phil, for that presentation. It was great to see the letters from ORS and the task force in particular, because I was a little bit concerned about, are we jumping the gun in terms of having an impact on a sort of from the side on a public process that's unfolding in terms of the options for Warner's Pond. You mentioned that capital plan, which makes perfect sense, and it's so much sense that it's maybe a little surprising it wasn't part of the original the Giroux Park planning. But can you just clarify who is what town department is responsible for the maintenance at the park? And
so my understanding is that at the moment, the Public Works does all of the sort of, they've managed the building that has gone on there, and they have managed the happened there to point. What we are hoping to do, we're in discussions with them about sort of negotiating sort of a new relationship with them, where the Recreation Commission has some responsibility for sort of envisioning, planning, designing, activating, put in there. We don't have the bodies to do it, but we would have a budget. We would contract back with CPW, who can do physical work for us as needed. But we're trying to work with them across all of our recreation sites to sort of rationalize that process so that they know how much we're going to ask of them in terms of man hours and labor and equipment for various recreational facilities across the town, so that can be budgeted rationally and you can figure out where it's paid for. So we want to put ourselves in a position of sort of being the public face of what happens at that recreation area. If you want a question about what's going on there, how do we use it, what do we do, what's the plan, they would come to us to talk about that. We would, behind the scenes, work very closely with CPW to physically do some things there, because they have the manpower to do so.
Okay. And you shared some of the sort of grand vision of some of the original planning around Giroux Park and its engagement with the pond. And I've been sort of following along since the very earliest discussions with that land acquisition and the development. And one of the big things that intervened, and I think really changed the scope, is of course that the donation of the White Pond Beach to the town, and that becoming a great point of water access for the town that was already substantially developed. And as lovely as Warner's Pond is, the White Pond is more amenable to swimming and boating, given that it's got significantly more depth.
Hey, Burton, I think that your headphones are failing you. And we're struggling to hear you.
Yep.
A little scratchy.
Would you mind saying what you said one more time, Burton?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. So I was saying, one of the intervening factors was the donation of the White Pond Beach by the White Pond Beach Association of the White Pond becoming great access, which there's been, and to really nice, a pond that's wonderful for swimming.
Terrific place.
Which Warner Pond is as lovely as it is, it's got its challenges with respect to both of those activities as it stands. And also there's been a big investment in White Pond. When I'm thinking about boating, and given that now we do have that White Pond resource, is there a consideration as to whether, for example, if you wanted to create an accessible boating facility, would it work better at White Pond versus at Warner, which may, especially if the pond is largely, if the dam is removed, that area that would be available for putting a boat in the water would be diminished by a significant percentage?
I think there's two answers to that. I think we believe that and a resource to use, regardless of where the Warner's Pond Task Force and what the sort of long-term future of Warner's Pond is. If the eventual solution there is to dam removal and restore river flow, then you've got actually water access along the Neshoba Brook to the rivers, which would be significantly more valuable resource than what you'd have at White Pond.
Interesting. Okay.
But that's even without that, there's value. You'll note that we have not proposed a swimming beach, because I don't think that's likely to be in the future of what's going on there. But I think there is kayak access and fishing access will be valuable. We have actually talked about doing kayak rentals and various other things at White Pond. And we certainly would look at whether that's an appropriate place to do this as well. I was thinking not an either or, but in the long term, a both and, because I do think that's a possibility. There is a great White's Pond is a terrific facility, and more enhancements that we can do there in the long term, I think would be useful. But I think that's probably a couple more years down the road before we.
Okay, great. My last question before I hand over the floor to my other committee members. This question came into me about the revolving fund reserve that the Rec Commission, I believe, has. You were talking about the length of timeline, that how long it would take to actually get this constructed, given that you got to come to us for planning money. It takes 9 months to get to town, or 6 months to get to town meeting approval. I think the funding you said in the fall, it would really be hopefully in July, August of 2025, but still you're talking, it extends out the town planning. Can you give me a sense of what the revolving fund reserve looks like, and whether you why that wouldn't be tapped in for this planning stage?
That is more used at the moment for facilities that we own and manage, and activities that we don't actually have ownership of this piece of property yet. We are looking at a number of ways to spend that money down on recreational activities across all of the things that we do in town. And we've just put a long sort of a 5-year spending plan in place, which we presented to the select board, I think, recently, last meeting that they have. It's small. It's really used more to do sort of the ongoing maintenance of those facilities rather than the capital investment up front. That's really the way we look at the revolving fund as its best use. When we're actively programming and activating places, it's keeping those programs up and running. Otherwise, it will dwindle down to pretty small amount pretty quick if we actually use it for capital investment. So it's more focused on operations, maintenance, and activation support.
And what's this funding source for that? I don't know anything about it. The question
fees. It's fees, program fees.
Okay. Fees.
Yeah, program
okay,
fees.
That makes sense.
So it's meant to support ongoing program. What it is.
Okay.
So what we would envision probably in the future is maybe we will have some fishing water access programs that you could run out of Giroux that would be funded through that sort of activity, and you could fund the ongoing activities that way.
Got it. Okay, that makes sense. I'll turn to my other committee members. Ed, you're on mute, Ed.
Okay. My question is about tying in the funding that we've set aside for dredging the White Pond. It's not that we could take some of that money and put it over, for this project, but the fact that it may never be spent, the dredging funds, so that this would be a opportunity to help out the Giroux Park aspect of the Warner Pond thing. So and I'm just thinking that it's complementary to the to what we have always wanted to do to help the Warner Pond development. So I just I'm just making a statement, I guess, basically that this is an opportunity to continue our support of the recreation going on at Warner Pond.
All right, thank you, Ed. Diane.
Thank you so much. This has been very helpful, Phil. Many of us have been watching this project for years.
Yes, so I've learned.
Yeah, and watching its many iterations and its many kind of promises and et cetera. I'm relieved to hear that you have the flexibility should the advisory committee say, look, dam the dam, get rid of the dam, let the whole thing become a more natural confluent area. So my question for you is whether and I know I should understand this, but I'm not sure I entirely do, whether the construction that you're recommending would work as well with that solution as it would with a dredging of the pond and all the other possible compromises that are being weighed out there.
We believe that under either scenario that the Warner's Pond Task Force is looking at, you can establish a useful and valuable water access point at Giroux Park.
Okay,
It will look a little different. It might stretch a little farther. What you can do when you get in the water may be different, but under either scenario, we believe that you can have a really nice water access resource there. So we're agnostic from that perspective on what the Warner's Pond Task Force decides to do. Either solution we can do that. Now, by the time we get around to designing this, we may actually who knows if they
Who
have made that
knows?
decision, and that would sort of guide us one way or the other. But we think it can be valuable under either scenario.
well, I wanted to confirm that yeah, I thought that's what you were saying, and I just wanted to confirm it, and that you're agnostic on it is exquisite. I mean, that's a wonderful choice of language. One other quick question. Depending on which direction all of this goes, in terms of the determination about how we use Giroux Park as a resource, I'm curious about the playground aspect to it. Is the playground meant to be something used by neighbors and children in the area? Is it meant to be used by people who are coming along the roadway on their bicycles and get off and play for a while and then get back on bikes and flow? So I'm curious what kind of what kind of folks do you imagine using that kind of resource? I can understand the pier and the fishing and even the kayak. I mean, that's that. In fact, the design that you presented is elegant, but I'm just wondering about the playground and whether there is sufficient population to use that right now. Now, with MCI coming up and with that space, who knows? With the what we call Junction Park, which is of course an abstraction for a space of land that is no longer really going to be a Junction Park. But in that particular space, that might ultimately have grandchildren dashing about and using it. But I mean, what evidence do you have that is useful or needed right now?
I think there's a lot of folks in the neighborhood, similar to the conversation you had with the Thoreau School earlier. There's a lot of folks in West Concord who would love to have more playground type resources for kids available to them. So it's definitely a local resource. And I think over time, as you see use of the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail expanding, and families coming out and taking rides out there, you'll get a lot of folks that will say, hey, it's a great place to go ride your bike along. You can stop and go in the playground there. You ride a couple more miles, you're in West Concord, and you can go, to a restaurant or shops. I think you'll begin to see much more use of that. And I think having a playground there that invites people to stop when they're coming on their trips on their bikes is a wonderful thing. So I think it'll grow. It'll grow over time.
Build it and they will come. Okay.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Yeah. My 8-year-old son is a playground consultant, has already told me what it's going to look like anyway. So those decisions have already been made.
Thank you, Diane.
Don't we love those people?
Paul.
Yeah, just a clarifying comment for Diane, since I'm involved with Warner's Pond as well. If the dam is removed, there's a deep pond, there's a deep area right adjacent to Warner's Giroux. That'll be the main access to the waterway, because there'll be a smaller pond right next to Giroux. Oh, that's one thing. The other, I'll just make a comment, we're putting my Recreation Commission hat on. I think we need to think of this as Giroux Park. It is connected to a lot of other pieces, but let's look at the park and, what can be done to make that a better park. Clearly it's related to Warner's, clearly maybe related to MCI, Bruce Freeman, but, I think the purpose of Phil and the commission putting this together was, how can we make this a better park? So just.
Good points. Thank you very much, Paul. Eve.
Yeah, thank you, Phil. I just have I have two questions. The first is a comment because Sue couldn't be here. It falls to me to point out a rather significant typo in your application on page 5, where you say that the application says that you're requesting 9,500, but then it says 90 everywhere else. So I just wanted to point that out and verify indeed it is 90,000 that you're requesting and not 90,500.
My apologies. Yeah.
This.
Okay, I will go back and look at that. Yeah, I think it's 90,000, so I'm not sure where that came from.
No worries. And then the second question, which has sort of been answered by Paul and others, but I just wonder if you could comment a little bit on how you will weave your timing in with the with the timing of the revelations of the task force and the Warner's Pond town process. Like, you gave us a very specific timeline, but I'm looking at the brief description of the engineering and design services, and it's fairly granular there, like the geotechnical and structural engineering. I know what that costs and what those engineers go through. They want to be precise about where they're putting stuff. And it seems to me that that level of work, you might want to wait. Like a general plan like you've got going now is fine, but when you really get into the engineering, you might want to wait to see exactly what the pond and or stream or whatever is happening is. I mean, who knows? Maybe we'll end up with a bridge to the little island there, and that would be the thing to do, is to, you know, to fund a little bridge. I don't know. I just made that up out of nowhere, but so I guess I would love to hear what you have to say about the timing and the timing of the task.
Yeah, well, I think what I said at the beginning, I tried to hedge a little bit about how much design you can get done, because it does depend on how much information you already have and where you're going to get to. I don't know what the timeline is for the task force, so I can't. I think we need to move ahead and be responsive to whatever they're going to do with the best information we have at the time when we're making these decisions. So we will certainly work very closely with them. If they have you know, a decision imminent that they're saying that we're going to wrap it up by such and such a place and have a recommendation, that would be great. That would make our work a lot easier. But we won't know that, and I don't think they know that as it's going. But there, you know, we're still a year out before we're going to be doing an RFP is going to be on the street, so a lot can happen. But we would work very closely with them to be responsive. You're right. The design, the actual building design you have to be a little flexible about how much you can do upfront until you have all the information that you need. But so we'll take that into account and we'll work closely with the committee, with the task force. Sorry. Yeah, it would be far easier if we knew exactly what that future resolution was going to be. But I don't want to use this to sort of push that conversation in any way that's not going to go. That's not our intent. Our intent is to be complementary, to look at Giroux Park. What can we do in Giroux Park to activate it, and sort of not force that other piece of the
I
puzzle.
love that. And I actually love the playground idea too. The idea of that there can't possibly be enough playgrounds in our town from my point of view. But with regards to the engineering, I know engineers, they don't like to price alternates. It just adds cost to the design when you price alternates. So just, that's all I had to say.
Thank you very much, Eve. Paul, you've still got your hand raised, or
yeah, I just want to add as far as, you know, where things go on the park, I think it's going to be quite limited by the topography of the park. You've been out there. There's certain areas that there's too much of a drop off. There are other areas where there's more of a slope. So I think where things go is going to be more dictated by the park than it is by the pond. Having said that, this big area, open area of the pond, is right adjacent to that low area. So there are some limitations where things can go even before you start engineering.
Okay, thank you. Mary Hartman, I see you have your hand raised.
Yeah, can I speak now? Burton,
yes, please.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. For those that you don't know me, my name is Mary Hartman. I'm on the select board. I'm speaking for myself. I live at 16 Concord Green, and I'm within walking distance of Giroux. I go there frequently. I went there yesterday. I went there today. I love it. And in my opinion, it's already been activated. Okay. There are a lot of people there. I find a lot of people there, and I just love it. It's such a peaceful place. I wanted to point out that I've been watching this for a long time. And when the ideas for Giroux were first put forward in front of the town, when the recreation director was looking for money to buy the land, she put quite an ambitious plan in front of the townspeople. And there was a lot of pushback against that plan, that it was a little bit too much concrete, a little bit too much facilities, and they wanted it to be more of a peaceful place or a natural place. And so that was scaled back quite a bit. So I wanted to just remind you of that there are some people in town that are very, very much like it the way it is and want to keep it as natural and as peaceful as it can be. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that comment, Mary. And with that, we'll consider ourselves into the public comment period. is if there's any members of the public that have any other questions or comments. Okay, any members of the committee, any final thoughts or comments? All right. I'm mindful of the fact that we're running a little over 30 minutes per application. We have one more to do and some minutes to get through this evening, and I'd love to finish before 9 o'clock for each of these meetings. So Phil, thank you very much for the application and the presentation and
Thank you.
answering all our questions this evening. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
With that, good evening, and we will turn it over to Anne with our final application of the evening, which is the Historic Preservation Survey of Modern Structures. So Anne, you've the floor.
Great. Right, I'll try to make this short since I know that it is getting late, and we'll try to get this wrapped up by 9. So I did put together a quick video, and I'll just run through these slides really quickly. Let me see. Are you able to see the screen?
We can, yes.
Okay, great. All right, so the Planning Division and Concord Historical Commission have joined together in this application for a historic preservation survey of modern structures and neighborhoods in Concord. The request is for $50,000 to hire a consultant to create this thematic study to help provide direction, set priorities, and inform decision making. So it will help the commission streamline review and enhance knowledge about these mid-century modern neighborhoods and structures, which are some of the most significant and yet least documented historic structures in Concord. And this is just a fun photo from the 1950s, I think. And there are also certainly these, modest houses built for every man, which I think is so appropriate, not just for the Historical Commission, but for all these housing discussions that Concord is having. So in terms of the need, there's, this, in the preservation field, there's this 50-year rule where things cannot be considered for the National Register unless they're over 50 years, no matter how significant they are. So when the town of Concord did its last big survey in the 1990s, there were only, 1,295 structures built before 1941. So the study was really limited to those few structures. So in the last 30 years, since that big survey, there are now 3,820 structures that have come of age. These are structures built before 1971 and are older than 50 years. So
and is that 3,800 that were essentially built after 1941 and before 1971?
No, just total. So
total,
the difference is this 2,500, right?
Thanks. Okay.
So, right, so they're like, 2,500 post-World War II structures that have not been surveyed or prioritized, like double, what was looked at in 1995. And then I looked through, there's a statewide survey, and I looked through all of the, the town of Concord forms. And there is literally one modernist structure surveyed in Macris in Concord. Whereas when I asked the GIS people to do a search, on Concord's assessor's records for structures that are described as modern, contemporary, or ranch, there are literally 1,000 structures. So, there's a huge gap. And also the other complication is that just recently the demo review bylaw was changed. Previously, it applied only to pre-1940 structures, but now it applies to all structures over 50 years. So it's the same numbers that we were just talking about. Now the commission and the staff have to review, an additional 2,500 structures that we have no guidance, right? Each one has to be looked at individually. So this is a more proactive and strategic approach to preservation that will save a lot of time on, for everyone. And just in terms of significance, not all structures, of course, built between 1941 and 1971 are modern, but those are more likely to be significant. And that's known, this area is known for mid-century modern structures, and the real leaders of this style were teaching at MIT and Harvard. They came here after World War II, and of course this is Walter Gropius standing in front of a Bauhaus building, I believe, and his house in Lincoln, which is, a huge tourist attraction. And so many other communities in this area have studied these mid-century modern structures, Lexington, Belmont, Carlisle, and Concord hasn't done it yet, when we really should. So the other, the influx of these European designers who, fled Europe because of fascism. They trained a whole generation of students at MIT and Harvard. And then those students came to Concord and surrounding communities and founded this sort of regional community of economists, architects, and educators. And they were building homes for every man. This is Carl Koch in front of one of the structures that he built. And he was, well known for many companies. TechBuilt was one of them. These headlines are terrific. Cambridge Man, which is Carl Koch, he plans the house that grows with the family. Portable partitions convert houses, easily adapt to family needs. They expand and contract. So they're creating these innovative solutions that, could actually help us today. It helps to look at the past to inform the future. So not only were the houses interesting in terms of, they're inexpensive, prefabricated, flexible, and innovative. The planning around them was also innovative. They were communal, and the neighborhood was designed with common land that was owned in common, just like, commons had been throughout American history, right? And they really encouraged outdoor living. And of course, Canantum is the most famous. Here's the design of the neighborhood, and here's, the common land. And of course, Carl Koch, a lot of the buildings were by TechBuilt, and Carl Koch owned a house in this community too. So not only did he design it, he lived here. Another one of the students was this William Burks, who he, worked with Carl Koch in the 40s, and then moved on to found his own company, DEC, and Acorn and Deck House Company. There, it still exists. And William Burks also built here in Concord and lived here in Concord. But again, his house has not been inventoried, and the neighborhood hasn't been either. And studying these structures has been a community goal for Concord, both in historical commission plans and community-wide plans since for 30 years. So it's really time to get this done, and just save a lot of time and meet this long-term community goal. We're going to be applying to Mass Historical Commission too, for matching funds. And they, obviously they do this routinely. Surveys are like fundamental to the field of historic preservation. And so they've identified the various phases, and we've, copied that and put that into the application as well. And obviously, if we do receive a grant from them, we'd be required to follow these phases, and they're very meticulous about how this is done.
Right.
And then this is just the final slide. That the entire range of Concord's historic assets is intrinsic to our town character and sense of history. So I think, the mid-century modern buildings have been left out, and it's high time that they're included. So I think.
Great, thank you, Anne. Thanks very much for that presentation and the pictures. It helps understand a lot better the scope of this application. I guess one question, could you help clarify how this report gets used, right? So the town invests in getting this survey done, and it's great to have that information, but then what's the primary use of the report? So it's not just, it's not on a shelf somewhere, but that it's adding value.
Right, so it's not just a report, it's, the forms are uploaded into Macris and they become available worldwide, and Macris, the Massachusetts Cultural Resource Information System, is where all preservationists and students go to, and even interpreters go to learn about the structures throughout communities in Massachusetts. So it's helpful just in terms of advancing knowledge, but also it helps homeowners understand what they've got and puts it in the larger context. So it's the education is hugely important. But then, as I was describing early on, this is also a return where the Historical Commission turns to when it makes decisions on demo reviews.
Okay.
So, yeah.
So the direct sort of return on investment for the town, I mean, there's the general knowledge, the encouraging, presumably preservation of some of these structures from the people who may not know, that they're in a house with historical significance. But the direct return is for the Historic Commission to have a reference guide that they can go to and doing a demo review.
Both. I mean, the educational piece is important, and it's not just about its historical significance, but what the innovations. These are experimental houses. So I wrote when you talk about sustainability, there were a lot of experiments in terms of sustainability too done with these houses. So you can, now that there are 50 years plus behind them, you can see what worked, what didn't work, and right, it helps inform the future, right?
Yeah.
So
having once shopped for houses in Canantum, I can tell you that large single pane picture windows didn't work for sustainability. There seems to be a lot of that in Canantum. Okay.
And also there have been efforts in Concord to expand historic districts and create neighborhood conservation districts. And the Jenny Duke and Agers was something that had been considered a few years back. So whether or not the community decides to do that, it's still having the information is just so essential.
Right. Okay. And I see we've got Alan Bogosian on a call as well. Alan, you're on the historic. Is it the Districts Commission or Historic Commission?
Chair.
Chair.
The
chair of the Historic Commission. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Anne, if it's okay, turning to Alan, I imagine you've got some insights on the value of this would be for your commission's work.
Well, we get a lot of requests for demolition reviews. Bill is one to come into town, so this is a good way of inventorying exactly what we have in the town. And like Ann was saying, moving into the future, a lot of the residences are getting older in town, and we want to document exactly what we have in our town. So that's another reason why we want to start taking an inventory.
Okay, thank you. Any other committee members? you've got to have question or thought as our architect. Right. Nancy, yes.
I think I'm unmuted.
Yes.
I've been quiet most of the meeting. But I will say I'd like to augment some of the things that Anne was saying and Alan too. I'm also on the Historical Commission, was the Historical Commission appointee. So I think in a broader context, and Anne's comment that these things are going to be available to people around the world, I think it's documenting these structures, which are so simple and not very splashy sometimes, are important to researchers worldwide to document a movement that really had far reach. I can only go as far as California, where when I came here and went to the Gropius house for the first time, I was shocked to see my kitchen countertops. Exactly my kitchen countertops on Gropius's kitchen. So they had influence, these architects had influence around the world and have influenced architecture. And I noticed Eve wrote something about 20th century modern. But they're important, even though they are modest often. And I think getting the grandiose vision that some people have for their houses might be tempered somewhat if they were shown maybe the value and the intent of some of these designs. So there's that. And then the only other thing, and I think Anne answered it, was the role of the potential grant that might come along with this. And I think there's a lot of interest in this, so I'd expect Mass Historical to view that favorably, but we'll see.
Okay. I think thanks for highlighting that point.
That's all I got.
Any other committee members? Oh, I'm just scrolling through as I see a couple of raised hands. Diane.
Thank you so much. This is so interesting, and I would defer most to Eve and Nancy and those who have architectural sophistication and historical background, and obviously to Alan. And I'm very puzzled by a phrase that you've used, which is would save time. Save time for whom and for what? I mean, yes, the Historic Commission, they would have this data, but what do you mean by save time? I mean, I think there must be a stronger argument for this than save time. And I wonder if you could be more explicit about what you mean by save time.
Right, I wrote it into the grant application.
Yes, I read the grant application.
Yes.
I looked carefully, but I'm just trying to understand what you mean by that.
Right, so currently we have to respond in a reactive way to every single application that comes in front of the commission. So the staff, I'm an architectural historian, and I have to research every single structure. So staff time costs money, right? And so if there were a study by a consultant that took a more holistic view and looked to the future and had a more proactive approach, then, it would save time and save taxpayer dollars, because staff wouldn't need to do the intensive research every single time a building comes in front of us.
Yeah.
Well, I really appreciate that. And I appreciate that I would recommend that in making that presentation, you say that.
Okay, sorry.
And then, no, I'm just besides the report, the application, which is exquisite, so I'm not arguing with that. I mean, I just think that the vague sense of save time, for whom and why and what are the implications. The second thing I would just say is that despite this, the $50,000, and look at the vast number of houses, if you think of Canantum, the complexities that a lot of Canantum families have of holding onto their homes, expanding them or retaining them or expanding them, and all of the complexities of that socially within that community and the discussions that go on there. Nonetheless, would a staff member, and I don't mean this in an argumentative way, but I mean this very sincerely, would a staff member not indeed have to go back nonetheless and research any specific home that came before the commission for being knocked down and restructured or redeveloped in some way. In other words, do you think that this study is sufficient to eliminate that need? Does that make sense as a question? Does that make sense to you as a question?
Oh, it does. It does. I don't think it would necessarily eliminate that need, but it would reduce the need.
In what sense would it reduce the need? I mean, so I'm just trying to imagine what a study would do. I mean, it's not going to do a deep dive on each one of these homes, is it? I think instead, I mean, for 50,000, that's not so much given what we pay people to do for consultancies. I mean, is it not really talking about the broad brushstroke? Is this not a watercolor rather than an oil painting? I guess is what I'm asking. And in that watercolor, would we not still need oil painters to get in there and try to say, well, yes, but this is this and this is that. As I said, I'm not trying to be argumentative. I'm really just trying to understand.
And I can
Yes,
help
of course,
answer
it's
that.
a combination.
Oh, good. Thank you.
It's gonna talk, oh, good.
I can help answer that question, Diane.
Okay,
the
good.
macros is just the beginning. The macros is Anne pointed out in the beginning, there's really only one home on the list. And there could be as many as 2,500 homes on the list. And you're right, it does sound like you go through and like do home by home, but in fact, macros isn't really organized like that.
Okay.
Have districts. So for example, Canantum can go in and a house, when you look up in Canantum, you could find in macros that, hey, that's in this Canantum district. And this is generally what all that means. But right now, it's almost like volunteers go and put in information in macros. There's not any like methodical way to research this stuff. So the real value of this survey is to launch other things happening from it. For example, when I have a bunch of projects in Canantum, and one of the things that I do whenever I start a new project on an older home is to go look to see if it's listed in macros, if the homeowner knows what they have, and then I know what they have. So as an architect, it helps me serve my clients. It also, as Anne alluded to, or even she said, a friend of mine was trying to get started a historic district on the Jenny Dugan Acres area, and he benefited greatly if he could have used the macros listings as a basis for his survey and for his petition, but he didn't have it at that time. And there are also, anyway, I could go on and on. I won't. This is why I'm not talking. I'm not talking.
No, but it's wonderful because I mean, these are the questions I needed answering because I'm just trying to imagine, of course, this is something we should be documenting. Of course, we need to know what our historical, particularly these structures, are such historical significance. I'm just wondering, to what degree they really save time, I guess, and to what degree they, how does that watercolor really serve the oil paintings that ultimately need to be made? And but I'm beginning to understand, and this is a world about which I know absolutely nothing. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you both. Let me go to somebody. John, you've had your hand patiently raised for some time.
Sure. And who will supervise the consultant?
I will.
So this will be added to your duties?
Yes.
Okay, because I know you have a lot of duties. And I didn't know if the Historic District Commission, I'm sorry, the Historic Commission would be helping you in the supervision process?
Oh, sure. Yes, of course. I work with them closely on everything. Yes.
Yeah.
And I try to pace myself too. I won't start it before if I'm feeling overwhelmed.
Okay. I know that the time may come when we're looking at projects and did they get finished on time, and was the party for whom they were being done satisfied? So,
well, we have 30 months, right?
Nancy.
I might have to take exception to the characterization of oil paintings being better than watercolor paintings.
Oh, I wasn't saying they were better. I was just saying they're different.
Well, you said maybe we would need to advance to the oil painting stage.
Okay.
One of the things, and maybe this is redundant, but it's not only the time, it's the record of the thinking that might be lost if this is, it doesn't excuse anybody from trying to go inside and find out what the floor plans are or where those floor plans might be housed. But maybe that some of that information about where other information about these houses and structures, maybe some of that information is likely to be uncovered during the MACRIS process, during the survey process. I don't know if that's legitimate or not. We'll see. Eve would know more about that, but she's not talking.
I'm not talking.
Thank you.
Alan, you've got another comment you want?
Yep, and just to Nancy's point, Diane, this is, I mean, the $50,000 is not a lot of money in the scheme of things, but it's a starting point for the HDC.
Oh,
So
I got, okay.
And that's what this is a starting point for us. We want that bucket to get going so we can start throwing the information into it on these houses and these sections of town, which we feel need to be documented.
I agree, Alan. They certainly need to be documented. I was just trying to really scope out yeah, the value. Thank you so much.
Okay. Nancy?
Oh, sorry. No, I'm done.
Does anybody else on the committee have any further questions, comments for this application? Okay, any public comment? We may have lost all our public. Okay.
We have Alan.
Well, Alan's here helping me with the presentation. Okay.
He's the boss.
Thank you very much, Anne. Thank you very much, Alan, for your time this evening as well. With that, we do have 3 sets of minutes to consider. Now, I'd like to go through them quickly, but I'm also sensitive to the fact that we need to get these minutes approved and up on our website as quickly as possible. I would say 2 sets of minutes I know have had Sue's comments, as I could tell from the file path name, and edits, and I have been through all 3 of them, and I didn't have any comments. Does anybody have any comments or question on the minutes?
On the third one, I'll trust you, and no on the others. So I'm good.
Okay.
Isn't the third one? The third one is just saying that we don't have any minutes because the meeting was canceled. So that's
right.
That's the minute.
I could have read that.
So I'll move to approve all 3 sets of minutes.
Thank you very much, John. Do we have a second to approve?
I second.
Okay, Diane, you were in first. I'll do a quick vote. Nancy, you approve the minutes. This is a vote on all 3 sets of minutes.
Yes, aye.
Okay, John.
Yes.
Thank you. Eve.
Yes.
Diane.
Aye.
Ed.
Yes.
Paul.
Yes.
And I'm going to make it unanimous that these minutes are approved. So Anne, if you could get those up on the website so that we are once again leading the, setting a good example for committees, that would be great. And then just to take a moment, I think to talk about our sort of agenda plans for our next meetings. One thing I've been asked to present to the select board at the first week of December on the CPC applications, sort of, I guess, a preview ultimately to sort of, I mean, you know, our town meeting preview in a way. They wanted input essentially before things got finalized, and so I think it would be great if going into that, we had a sense of the committee as to whether the applications had their support. I also think there's going to be questions around what we would be doing with any funding that is not allocated, because I think, well, we will definitely be in that position. I would note that the coalition sent out an email sometime in the last couple of weeks saying that there had been an unexpected surge in revenues at the registries of deeds. Maybe, I don't know, due to a slight dip in interest rates that transactions started happening again. So I think we will probably have more funding than we had last year, which means we will have significant money for reserves. So all that is an intro to say, I think our next meeting, we can get down into brass tacks of going through these. So, you know, Anne, it'd be great if I know we don't have many projects, but have sort of that project tracking spreadsheet that we can go through and put up the numbers, what we think should be assigned to each one. I suspect we're going to get through that process in one meeting, unlike in years past where it's been a little more complex.
Do we have a date?
The next meeting, let me just pop over to my other screen. I believe the next it's in November, right? We've got one in
Oh, I should have it.
yeah, I'm sorry, I moved away from the web, the page on the website.
November 19th.
November 19th would be the next one.
Yep,
And then
that's
we've
what I
got-
have, that's what I have on my calendar as well. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
You bet. And then we've got, I think one more before the end of the year, and I believe it is, or maybe we've got two in December. Could that possibly be right, Anne? You know, I don't have
Just one.
Okay.
It's December 10th.
Okay. And just given the small number of applications, I think we will have no problem coming up with essentially our motion by the end of the year in those two. So
Burton, I request, my understanding is we have a significant amount of money in reserve, even without the new funding. For the next meeting, I don't know if we're gonna have the new funding, but could you pull together the amount of reserves in various pots, unspent, open space, you know, there's at least two or three
Yeah.
buckets of unspent reserves. So
that's a great request. And is that something where we could get a readout from the town you know, the town manager, but I guess it's the treasurer, the CFO's office on what our reserves are sitting at now? And you know, that number, normally we're worried about that down to the dollar with interest and the like, but I don't think we need to be that precise, but if they can give us a quick report on that.
I think we're going to get a lot of questions about the Giroux monies at any town meeting. I mean, you know, unless a lot of things are resolved ahead of time, Burton, I think this could be a more complicated discourse than just simply, oh yes, let's go forward. I mean, because I think there are a lot of people who are wondering, what about that money that was put aside? Where is it? How much of it is being spent? I mean, I think that's an ongoing source of concern in the community. So I think, you know, getting that money, as Paul so wisely suggests, you know, very specifically, I think we almost need to set that one aside as a special document for us to review, so that we could be able, so that you publicly can be able to answer any of the questions that might be attendant with that.
And
Because
are you
before
referring
you
to
go
the?
before the select board or anything else, I mean, having been in that position and been asked questions, and you've been in it too and had to ask questions, you know, I think that we want to arm you with as much data and information that is both practical and honest as we possibly can.
Are you
Yeah, and
referring to the old project or the new application, or both?
I'm talking about the old projects, Paul.
Yeah.
I mean, because people know out there, because we've gone to town meetings with it, people know that there's a lot of money sitting someplace. You know, where is it and how is it being spent, and can it be applied to this, can it be applied to that? I mean, I've been getting emails about it on a pretty regular basis from people and questions about it. So, I mean, I think that the degree to which we can, if we can have Anne just pull out that item, you know, Giroux Park and dredging money and everything else, and what we spent, what we haven't, where the money resides, it would put Burton in a better public position to be able to address things, you know. And
The Giroux question maybe is better for Carrie, because
Yeah.
Giroux money consists of both CPA and town capital money. I know Carrie briefed the select board just on that matter, where we were and how much money was left. I don't know which bucket it's in, whether it's CPC unspent or town unspent, but I think the town question is going to be more broadly than just CPC.
I wasn't suggesting it was only going to be CPC, Paul. I'm just saying it's out there. And I just think that we need to be able to be, you know, very straightforward. Nancy, you seem concerned about what I'm saying. So can you?
No, I was just thinking the same thing that Paul just said, and in addition to that, I think for CPC, it's a ripe opportunity for collaboration between our treasurer and Anne.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
I just know that a lot of people are wondering, where is that money? Has it been spent? What happens if the dam doesn't go forward? You know, we've got time in between. The town meeting is not going to be until June.
I'm sorry, you're talking about Giroux or Warner's Pond, or both?
I think I'm talking about Giroux Park, Paul.
No, the Warner's Pond fund for dredging or dredging, that's not Warner's Pond. That's
Wait,
$1
that's
million.
not zero.
Oh,
Am I
So-
misspeaking? I thought Giroux Park was the dredging.
Well,
No.
well, they're intertwined. If I may, yes, at town meeting, we will get questions about the 3 prior tranches of funding we've done
Yes.
related to the pond improvements. There might also be questions around the Giroux project, which is separate from the pond because of concerns around how that was managed. But I think that those are properly with the town manager. But I will certainly have my facts in order for questions on that. I think for our next meeting, but Paul, you were suggesting we need to know how much money we've got in the bank in our reserves.
Exactly. Yeah.
Which are separate from the allocated Warner's Pond or whatever, but our reserve funds, because if for folks that have had the chance to look at the letter, for example, we've already had a request that we put that reserve towards our community housing as a funding category. And there
That's
might be other people who have input on land acquisition or what have you.
Diane, I'm sorry, I was unclear. When I said unspent, that there's committed money that hasn't been spent.
That's
So
right.
I'm talking about reserves of various types that.
I'm sorry, Paul, that I have misspoken, but so I would, let me just quickly go back and say it's the Warner's Pond, Giroux Park as a combination unit. And we have planned a lot of money for that. We put aside a lot of money for that, almost $1 million in pockets. And I think that when people see that we're going to put a dock in there, I mean, I just know, because I've just heard too much about it in the community. People are going to say, a dock? How can you put a dock in there if we don't know what we're doing? So, I mean, and what about the other money? I mean, really, honestly,
Well, but I don't mean to be argumentative, but the $1 million that we have committed has nothing to do with Giroux. That's Warner's Pond.
Well, I'm saying Warner's Pond and they're adjacent to each other, honey.
Yeah.
That pier that's going out into Warner's Pond is, in fact, Warner's Pond and Giroux Park. They're connected.
Yeah, but I don't want to conflate the two in the public's mind because they're entirely separate issues.
I know you think they're separate issues, Paul, and it's not that I'm disagreeing with you, because I never do, but I'm just going to say that I don't think that's how it's necessarily seen in the public eye. So, I mean, I want to make
sure that we see those differently, that we're talking about, and they are related, just as Bruce Freeman Rail Trail is related.
I understand.
They're all kind of connected,
right?
They're not the same.
Well, okay, but I've had people tell me, for instance, I had a very knowledgeable and wonderful soul say to me, you can't kayak on Warner's Pond. It's so weed rotted and so shallow that I can't, I certainly couldn't canoe, and I would be reluctant to kayak on that space. I've never done it, Paul. I don't know. I just know that I hear that on a regular basis. So, I mean, I just think we need to be very clear about our resources to that collective property, Warner's Pond and Giroux Park. And if there were not a dock involved, there would be no reason to. We could talk about a park and something else, but there's a dock going into the water, and the water is something we funded to be cleaned up. So, Nancy, am I wrong?
Yes, I have a question. I thought I heard that the Giroux Park design details are not totally set in concrete yet.
They aren't.
And that they may decide not to put a dock in.
It may be infeasible, but no, the objective is to put a dock and a playground on there.
Yes.
The only question is where and how.
Yeah, and well, it doesn't matter. I'm Burton. I'm just trying to protect you from what I can imagine would be an avalanche of public discourse. And
and if I may interject, first of all, I relish the opportunity to
take it on
to show you that side of me which comes out when somebody pokes me in the chest. And I think I've got a pretty clear issue. What I'd ask is that we table this really good discussion for when we get into the projects at our next meeting, so everybody's fresh. You guys are raising great points. For preparation, to go back to Paul's original point, and if you could get those buckets so that we know that, because as soon as we get through this, the decision on whether we're going to fund these applications, I think we should be having a discussion around whether we would want to move money out of just a general reserve and put it into a dedicated reserve, either be community open space or recreation or community housing. So with that,
I'll
I'm
move
sorry
to-
to have complicated things. I'll be quiet.
not at all, not at all. You're queuing up great issues for our discussion in November. John,
What-
did you have
I'll
a-
move to
What
adjourn.
date?
Just get her to be quiet. Get her to shut up. Let's adjourn quickly.
one more time for the back. What's the date of the hearing? Our next meeting, November
19.
19th?
19th.
When is
Okay,
your
great.
meeting with the select board, Burton?
I believe it's December 2nd. Yeah.
I'll
Okay.
move to adjourn
We
again.
had a motion to adjourn. I would second that. You don't need to do a vote to adjourn.
I thought
we-
you could just declare it.
Yes, I
And he
hereby
does,
declare
so
it adjourned.
declare.